Hi everyone. I'm just going to wait a couple of minutes just so that everyone can filter in and then we'll get started very soon. So you might have missed it as you just came in, but I just said at the start that we're going to wait a couple of minutes just so that everyone can come in who has registered. But yeah, we'll get started very soon. So I can't see anyone trickling in, so I think we'll get started. Hi everyone, I'm Amanda. I am part of the primary and secondary initial teacher training team at Best Practice Network. I sort of manage the candidate journey, so from when someone applies to when they finish the program. I also have Chloe with me here today, so I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi everybody, good afternoon. My name's Chloe Dolphin. I'm the head of secondary ITT here at Best Practice Network. So I'm responsible for planning the secondary ITT programme, designing the content, and we'll be delivering that from September 2024.
Amazing. So Chloe will be here mainly to monitor the chat box. So if you do have any questions, just pop them in the chat box. There is also a Q&A function. You can use that if you want to, but we do have the chat as well. So whichever one you prefer, Chloe will be monitoring those. There is a short presentation, to just go through before we get to the Q&A section. And due to the format of the webinar, you won't be able to speak unless we allow you to. So if you do want to unmute yourself and ask a question, just let one of us know in the chat box and then we can unmute you. I just need to say as well, we are recording this session and the recording has started already. If for whatever reason you don't want to be in the recording, just let us know and we can edit you out of the recording. The recording will also be sent out to everyone that registered, so you should get that in a couple of days. Right then, let's get started. So first of all, who are we? So we are Best Practice Network and we're an accredited national ITT provider, so that's initial teacher training, but we also do various different kinds of apprenticeships, and we also do have early career framework programs and national professional qualifications. And we actually are an Ofsted outstanding provider. We're also one of the only providers to do the golden thread. So that means we can support you from your journey from becoming an initial teacher training trainee to then becoming a head teacher if that's what you want to do. This is our second year of running initial teacher training, and we've introduced secondary initial teacher training and primary SEND initial teacher training this year. So this webinar is going to be more focused on the initial teacher training apprenticeship. So the postgraduate teacher apprenticeship is more of an alternative to teacher training as opposed to traditional university-based routes. So our trainee teachers on the apprenticeship will be employed by a school and they will be paid a little bit more than what you would expect an apprentice to be paid. So they'll be paid on the unqualified teacher pay scale. You don't pay any fees for this course, the trainee. All the funding is through the government apprenticeship levy. So we have a few different pathways. For our primary initial teacher training, as standard, we have the 3 to 7 age route, and then we also have the 5 to 11 age route. We also do a primary SEND route, so that is special educational needs and disabilities, and you can do both age routes as the standard primary. And then we also have our secondary initial teacher training, and that is an 11 to 16 age route or a 14 to 19 age route. And you can also choose a subject as well with secondary. So you can do either of those age routes with your maths and English, all your sciences, a couple of languages, and then geography and computing. So the age routes just refer to the ages that you'll be working on whilst you're doing the apprenticeship. So after you gain your qualified teacher status, you'll be qualified to work across any age in that chosen pathway. So if you chose primary, you'll be qualified to work across 3 to 11 age routes. As I said, this webinar will be more focused on the apprenticeship. We do have a fee-funded route to all these pathways, and the fee-funded route is self-funded, or you can pay for it with student loan or various other ways, and the website page to that will be linked at the end of the presentation. But yeah, if you have any questions on that as well, please just do ask them. So just to expand on the teacher apprenticeship a little bit, to sort of recap what I just went over. For the apprenticeship, there are no fees for the trainee. You're paid on the unqualified teacher pay scale and you are employed by your school. There are two types of apprentices that we get. Firstly, there are what we call upskills, and these are candidates who have they have the support from their school. They're maybe currently working as an unqualified teacher, but they already have that support of a school behind them. And then we also have what we call national trainees, and these are people that they want to train to teach, but they don't necessarily have the school support behind them. So that's where they would apply to us, have a successful interview, and then afterwards we would help to find a placement. This isn't something we can guarantee, unfortunately, just because availability in your area might not be too high for schools that want to take apprentices, but we do have the ability to work with any school as a provider, so there's no limitations on which schools we can work with. And then as an apprentice, there are a couple of incentives from the Department for Education for employers that want to employ secondary apprentices. So there are sort of grants that the government will give to schools to help with the salary cost for secondary apprentices. So just looking at how the apprenticeship is delivered and what your year will look like, the apprenticeship lasts for 12 months, and then you have your 3-month endpoint assessment. Every apprenticeship has to last a year and a day, so ours is 12 months and then that 3-month endpoint assessment. You will have 4 days a week school-based training in a class, and then you'll have 1 day a week for self-study, and that 1 day a week can be very varied over the year. Some days you may just spend working on your assignments. Sometimes you might have online webinars, and sometimes there might be face-to-face events as well. And these events, the face-to-face events, aren't guaranteed for every trainee, but it just depends on what trainees are in your area and if there's enough people to make a face-to-face group. But yeah, that's not confirmed yet for this year. So in terms of what the course will look like, in term 1, you will spend in your employing school. And then after the Christmas break, you will go to term 2, and that is where you'll have your contrasting placement. So it will be a 6-week contrasting placement in a different key stage to what you're in the employing school. And that is organised by us, or if you're part of a multi-academy trust, they may also organise this for you. But yeah, you don't need to do any organising with the contrasting placement. And then in term 3, after the Easter break, you will come back to your employing school, and that's when you'll be preparing for qualified teacher status. So you'll be recommended for qualified teacher status and assessed against the teacher standards in this term. And then moving on to term 4, so the next academic year, that's when you'll complete your apprenticeship endpoint assessment. So you can start working as a qualified teacher in this term, but you will just need to still do that endpoint assessment for the apprenticeship. So there are a few different modules over the year, and each of the modules begin with an intensive training and practice week, and these align to the core content framework areas. So that is where the initial teacher training curriculum sort of comes from. So in terms of eligibility and entry requirements, we do ask that every candidate has a bachelor's degree with a classification of 2-2 or above. We can accept ordinary or third degrees, but these trainees usually need to have a lot of experience to back them up, and that's sort of assessed on a more case-by-case basis. But yeah, usually a 2-2 or above. And then you need your GCSEs as well. So for primary initial teacher training, you need GCSEs grade C4 or above in English, Maths and Science. But for secondary, you only need English and Maths. And we do accept recognised equivalents as well. So if for whatever reason you have overseas qualifications, then we do accept statements of comparability and that kind of thing. And if for whatever reason you don't have your GCSE, we do accept equivalency tests as well. So you can still apply to the course now if you don't have your GCSE, but you would need to complete an equivalency test before the course start date. And the other thing you need is the right to work and study in the UK. So if you have a British passport, then that means you have the right to work and study. If you have other kinds of visas, then the visa would need to be valid for the duration of the apprenticeship. And you would also need to have 3 years residency in the UK prior to beginning the programme. So the applications are open. You can scan this little QR code, and this takes you to both the primary and secondary apprenticeship application page. So yeah, feel free to scan that QR code or just hop on our website. There's a little link at the bottom there. And if for whatever reason you have any questions that you don't want to ask on the chat box here, then just give us an email. The email's just here. It's teach@bestpracticenet.co.uk. So there, like I mentioned earlier, there is a fee-funded route to initial teacher training. It's the exact same course. It just means that you pay for it yourself. And if you want to, you can click this link on the screen as well, and that will take you to the fee-funded initial teacher training website. So thank you all for listening to me. I think I'm going to open the floor now to questions. I don't know if there have been any in the chat box already, Chloe, that I can answer.
We've got one that's just in the chat at the moment that you might be able to answer, Amanda, about what's the deadline for applying for September 2024 entry?
Sure. So we don't currently have a set deadline. You can apply anytime up until the summer, really. So the earlier you apply, the better, I would say, just in case you know, we need time to find you a placement, that kind of thing. But yeah, applications are open now until we decide to close them, basically. But it is open for the foreseeable future.
Thank you. There's also a question about how this might work for a career changer. So someone's asked whether they are at a disadvantage in terms of securing the apprenticeship because of a lack of school experience.
So, I mean, there is a reason why school experience isn't a requirement for the course, and that is because we fully support people who want to make a career change. I think in terms of not having class experience, that's not necessarily a setback. Just as long as you can show that you do have experience working with children in your interview and on your CV, or any experience you can draw on that you think will be relevant to the program and to teaching would obviously strengthen your application. You could also look at doing some volunteering work as well, just so you get a feel for the classroom, because it's always good to check if it really is right for you.
Fab, thank you, Amanda. We've got a question from Rosie, which is about the school-based training. She's asking whether the trainees will be placed in a class with another teacher or whether they will be left on their own from time to time. So I'm happy to answer that, Amanda, if you're happy for me to.
Yeah, of course, go ahead.
So in terms of the programs, so you will begin by doing some observing the class teacher or class teachers if you're training in the secondary phase. You'll then do some co-planning and co-delivery alongside the class teacher, and then you'll gradually build up your own independent teaching of the class or classes within your subject if you're training in the secondary phase. So you won't be left on your own through those early stages when you're establishing yourself and whilst you're learning your practice. But towards the end of the programme, when you're in the latter stages of your school-based training and your teaching timetable is building up, there may be times when you're left alone with the class, as long as your mentor or the class teacher is happy for you to do so. But generally, on the whole, you're supervised throughout. We've got a question from Vicky about, does there have to be a vacancy in the department for the school to take on an apprentice? She says that the department she's hoping to train in her school is fully staffed currently.
So it kind of depends on the conversations that we have with the school. It may be that they're willing to upskill you as an apprentice, so they may be able to create that sort of vacancy for you. But it's usually likely that there will need to be a vacancy in the department that you want to teach, but I guess that's not always advertised by the school if they're going through this route. So it would be a conversation that we have with the school and also that you have with the school, just to double check that they do have the space required for you.
Great. We've got a couple of questions about the second placement. So we've got Rebecca just asking whether she's able to complete the whole programme in one school rather than doing the second placement somewhere else. And then we've also got Michael, who just wants to know more about the second placement school and where that might be located. So shall I answer the first part, Amanda?
Go ahead, yeah.
So in terms of this program, you have to do 2 placements in 2 different schools in order to meet the requirements to be awarded qualified teacher status. So that second placement is an essential part of the course. So I'm hoping, Rebecca, that answers your question. Amanda, are you happy to pick up about Michael's question about where his second placement might be?
Sure. So our placement team would look at your postcode and we would find a placement local to you. So we take into account all of your travel restrictions and commitments that you might have just to find something that's going to work for you. Usually we say that it's not going to be more than 45 minutes travel time. Obviously, it does depend on where you're based, so we can't completely guarantee this, but it would be local to you. You wouldn't have to move house or anything for the contrasting placement.
Thank you. We've got Sharon just asking whether it's possible to do the course part-time.
No, unfortunately not. Not currently anyway. We are looking into a part-time route for initial teacher training, but no, this course is full-time and you're contracted 32.5 hours a week usually in school.
Thank you, Amanda. We've got another question from someone who's asking whether the course is available in Wales.
So you can live in Wales, you would just have to work in England. So say if you lived in Cardiff, then you could easily travel to Bristol if you're happy to do so. But yeah, you can live in Wales because obviously that is the UK, but we can only work with schools that are based in England.
Thank you. Joel's asked a question about whether there's an advantage to getting a PGCE over doing the apprenticeship, which just awards QTS, and whether that makes any difference to your prospects beyond that time when you qualified. So I'm happy to answer that. So Joel, You need QTS to teach in England. PGCE is not a requirement to do so. The PGCE, you'll be aware, is an additional postgraduate qualification that you can do alongside the QTS. It's not something that we currently offer. We only offer the QTS route in terms of the primary and secondary ITT. The thing that is a sort of positive about the PGCE aspect of it is it's an internationally recognised qualification. So if you're wanting to travel or have that flexibility beyond qualifying, you might be interested in that. Be aware that the PGCE route obviously requires some further study and assessment at master's level because they typically carry master's level credits. So there is an additional demand in terms of the programme, the academic requirements as well. So that would be something that you would need to weigh up. But you don't, in terms of prospects when you are coming to look for a teaching post, the schools that you're applying to will just be looking at whether you have got QTS. That will be an essential requirement for a teaching post. The PGCE is often seen as desirable, but it's not essential. So you shouldn't be at any disadvantage when applying for teaching roles beyond being qualified. Sadi has just asked a question about funding. Amanda, are you happy to just go back over the salary again?
So with the sorry, lost my train of thought there. With the apprenticeship, you will be paid on the unqualified teacher pay scale. So you'd be contracted 32.5 hours a week and employed in your school, and so they would pay you the salary on the unqualified teacher pay scale. So that can vary with location and the type of school and your experience, but generally it's between 20,000 and 30,000. But yeah, very wide bracket. It's usually on the lower end of that scale.
Great, thank you. We've got we're working our way through the questions, Amanda. You'll be pleased to know. Someone's just asked about where's the centre-based training? Where does that take place?
So it depends where you're based. As I said, we haven't finalised the face-to-face groups just yet. It's more likely that if you live close to a city or in a city, then you will have face-to-face events that are local to you. But if you're too far away from any face-to-face events that we create, then you will be placed in an online group only. So yeah, it depends where you are, but it would be local to you if there is a face-to-face group local to you.
Thank you, Amanda. Michael's just asked a question about what the self-study days look like on a Friday. So as Amanda mentioned, there'll be throughout the programme, you'll be engaged in school-based training 4 days per week. 1 day a week, you'll be undertaking the sort of theoretical side of the programme. So that'll be a combination of core training days, online webinars within your subject, enhancement webinars, which will also give you some training around aspects of the research or current issues in school that are really relevant at the moment. And then you'll also engage in online study packs, which will help to develop your knowledge of teaching and learning as well. So that's what the sort of 5th day looks like, that training day. Okay, let me just have a look. Rima's just asked about, can you get qualified within a year, which means that you could apply for a job after the 12 months?
Yes, so you will start your apprenticeship at the very beginning of September, and then after a full year, at the end of term 3, that's when you'd be recommended for qualified teacher status. So you'd be able to start working as a qualified teacher the September after that. So that would be September 2025. And then you would just do your endpoint assessment whilst you were working as the qualified teacher.
Thank you, Amanda. We've got another question from somebody just asking what the application process looks like.
It sort of looks like you would apply, obviously, and then you would we check your application, make sure everything's okay, and ask you for anything that's outstanding. And then once we're all satisfied, you would be invited to interview. And then after a successful interview, we would then start searching for a placement if you don't already have one. And yeah, that could take a few months or it could take weeks. But once we do secure a potential placement for you, then you would go to a second stage interview in person with that school. And then once they're happy with you, that's when we would start doing all the pre-program checks and we'd send you your official offer. And that's when you'd be able to then get started on all the pre-program things that we ask you to do, and then you'd be ready to start in September.
Thank you, Amanda. Just to follow up on that, Joel's just asked about whether it would be worth participants contacting local schools to see if they could offer the apprenticeship.
Absolutely, yeah. Any school contacts that you think you might have, or any local schools close to you, yeah, definitely do get in touch with them just to get that ball rolling with the apprenticeship conversation. Sometimes schools don't know that apprenticeships are an option for them, so yeah, it's definitely good to reach out if you do want to before you apply.
Thank you. We've got somebody asking, they said they're currently working as an unqualified teacher at a college teaching English, and they want to know, is this something that they can do? I'm assuming the apprenticeship at a college setting.
Do you want to answer this one, Chloe?
Yeah, so we offer a 14 to 19 pathway in terms of the secondary. So I think it would depend whether what the age range of your college is. I know that some colleges are not just, they don't just have post 16 provision, they also offer some form of either 14 to 19 provision, or sometimes it might be an all through school. So I think we'd need to know a little bit more detail about that. But any questions, you could just drop that through to us via email with some more information, and we'll be able to answer that.
Absolutely.
Let me just have a look at other bits and bobs. We've got a question from Sasha who says they'd like to do the primary 3 to 7 and send because they've got experience in both. Does this mean that they would do placements in both settings, a mainstream and a send setting?
So, in terms of the routes, if you were to do the primary send 3 to 7 route, that means your employing school would be a special school, so a send school, and then your contrasting placement would be in a mainstream school. So you would get experience in both. Alternatively, if you wanted to focus on the primary 3 to 7 route without send, you could apply for that, and then you'd have your employing school as a mainstream school, and then if we can organize it, you might be able to do your contrasting placement in a special school. So yeah, it just kind of depends on which one you want more experience in.
Thank you, Amanda. We've got a question from Vicky who wants to know if you can apply for more than one program. So, for example, the primary, could you apply for an apprenticeship in the primary program and the secondary, or for example, the primary and then the send primary?
Yes, you absolutely can. So you can apply for any routes that you want to do. Obviously, you can't do both routes at the same time, but you could apply to primary and secondary, or primary send and a standard primary. The only thing would be if you do apply to primary and secondary, then you would have two separate interviews for those two routes.
Thank you, Amanda. Jason, I'm conscious that you've sent through a sort of question in a few parts. It's quite a complex one because of the nature of the school that you're working with. So we'll just make a note of yours and respond to you. So thank you for sending your email in the chat. The final few questions, Amanda, that we've got really are around sort of entry requirements from people who have non-UK qualifications. So we've got somebody who's asking about the fact that they've got a degree in education from Africa, they're on a dependent visa. Would they be qualified? Do they qualify, or are they eligible for the apprenticeship program? Are you able to answer that one?
Yeah, absolutely. So we would ask for a statement of comparability from UK ENIC, and that would tell us whether your bachelor's degree is equivalent to a UK bachelor's degree. And in terms of the visa, we would have to know when the visa is due to expire. If it's due to expire at any time on the program, then unfortunately we wouldn't be able to enroll you. That's just sort of the funding criteria. Your visa has to be eligible for the entire duration of the apprenticeship.
Thank you, Amanda. We've got a sort of similar question from Daniela, so I think that might answer part of your question, because they were just wanting to know about how they would demonstrate the equivalent qualification from abroad, but they've gone on to ask about what additional tests might they be. So I wonder if it's worth Amanda just explaining about the equivalency tests.
Yeah, of course. So we accept equivalency tests from a few different equivalency testing providers. If you would like to email us, and I can easily share those links for the equivalency tests. So you would look at those links and choose which test you want to do, and then you would just have to complete that equivalency test before the start of the program. We would need to see a confirmation of booking from you, just so we know that it's actually happening and the date that it's going to happen. And then hopefully you would pass that, and then we would see your equivalency certificate, and that's what we would accept. If you are needing an equivalency test for maths and English, then whilst you're on the apprenticeship, you would also be required to do functional skills as a part of the apprenticeship as well. So that's another consideration with equivalency tests.
Fab, thank you, Amanda. We've got a couple of questions about people who are currently waiting for GCSE results. So they're obviously due in August of this year. Is that fine for them to then be able to apply now for an apprenticeship to start in September 2024? I'm assuming that would just form part of their condition.
Yes, yeah. So that, as you say, Chloe, that would form a part of their conditional offer. If we were to find you a school and make you an offer, then that would just be part of your offer. So we would set a date for you to meet that condition, which would be obviously results day, and that would be the day that you send us over your certificates.
Yeah. Thank you, Amanda. Daniela, I can see that you've got a specific query about whether you still need to do the tests, because you've already completed some. So what I would suggest for you is to just drop us a little email with the details of those in, so that we can check those. And the same goes, Sadia, for you. Let me just have a look. Rima has a question about whether QTS allows you to work abroad.
I think you mentioned this one, didn't you, Chloe? If you wanted to just go over that one again.
Yeah, so the QTS is a requirement to teach in England and Wales. If you are thinking about teaching abroad, obviously that you carry that qualification with you. You'd need to have a discussion with your school about whether they accept that. Quite often people who want to teach abroad decide to follow the PGCE and QTS route, because the PGCE, that postgraduate certificate in education, is an internationally recognised qualification. So Rima, you might want to explore that as an alternative. Do come back to us if you've got any further questions about that once you've had a look. Let me have a look and see what else we've got. Somebody's asked about whether the apprenticeship generally leads to an offer of employment, and if not, what support is available in seeking employment once qualified. So I'm happy to sort of start by answering that, and Amanda, feel free to chip in.
Sure.
So the first thing to say is that regardless of whether you're on the fee-funded route or the apprenticeship route, we will offer you support to prepare for applying for jobs. So that will look like sessions around how to write a personal statement, how to prepare for interview practice. We'll review letters of application for you. So there's lots and lots of support available there to help you to find jobs, apply for them, and hopefully be successful. In terms of whether the apprenticeship generally leads to an offer of employment, I think that's very much going to depend on the sort of staffing supply and demand in your school. If a vacancy arose within the subject or the phase that you had trained in at that school, and they were happy to employ you as an early career teacher, an ECT beyond your apprenticeship year, then that would be something that you could pursue with your school. But as I say, we put all that support in place so that you have that security. Amanda, is there anything that I've missed there?
No, that sounds good. I don't think I have anything to add there.
Good. Let me have a look. We've got, does the school get any funding?
So the school for the apprenticeship, if you're on the primary apprenticeship, the school doesn't receive any funding from the government in the form of a grant or anything like that. But they would pay for the course through the apprenticeship levy if that's something they have access to. So they wouldn't be paying the full £9,000 out of their own pocket. But there are also different schemes and that kind of thing if they don't have access to the levy. So for primary, there aren't really too many incentives. There is a mentor grant that has come in recently. So if your employing school gives you a mentor, which obviously they should, then they would get a grant to help with the mentor's salary. There was, oh yeah, sorry, lost my train of thought there. For secondary initial teacher training, there are incentives. So the school that you're employed at, they would receive a grant, and that is paid directly to the school, and that helps with the cost of your salary.
Thank you, Amanda. We've got a question from Dana, who I'm assuming is talking about the primary route here. They're saying, can they do the training in the school-based nursery?
So as long as you're on the primary 3 to 7 route and the nursery is attached to a mainstream sort of school, then that is fine, as long as you are able to teach that 3 to 4 age range and they follow the national curriculum. That just means as well that your contrasting placement would need to be in a different school. So it can't be in the school that's attached to the nursery. It has to be in a completely different school. And so that's the only thing to be aware of there.
Thank you, Amanda. Sasha's asked a question about whether you are paid less if you choose the primary pathway over the secondary one because the school doesn't get a grant. And the answer there is no. You're paid on the unqualified teacher pay scale, regardless of whether you are on the primary or the secondary programme. Michael just wants to follow up around some of the enrolment things that are taking place in August. So the programmes start, Michael, just in the very last week of August are the sort of first day of learning. So that looks like induction and welcome weeks. So chance for us to explain about what the programme involves, formally start your apprenticeship, make sure that you're familiar with all the systems and that you're able to access some of the online platforms that we use for our training before you begin your school-based placement. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I just want to mention as well with
Please do.
pre-program checks. So after you're given an offer, you'll have a few pre-program checks to complete. So that would just be a DBS check, and there'd also be a health check, which is to make sure that you're fit to teach. And then there would also be a safeguarding course as well. So that's just a couple of extra things that you will need to do before the course starts. I think I might end the webinar very shortly. I think we can answer a couple more questions.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm conscious that this could go on all night. Obviously, everyone's
Yeah,
got
of
lots of
course.
questions. So yeah, we're going to answer a couple more, I think. And then if anyone has any other questions, please just feel free to email us or give us a call, and then we can answer that.
Lydia's just asked, how likely are you to be matched with an employing school if you haven't got current affiliations with one? So, for example, you're not currently working in a school. And she's asked, if you're not able to be matched with a school for the apprenticeship, can you then switch to the fee-funded programme instead?
So how likely are you to be matched with a school? That's sort of an interesting question, just because it really does vary. It depends on the availability of local schools in your area. For some candidates, sorry, there might be 5 schools local to them and they all want to employ an apprentice, but for some candidates there might just be a little bit less availability for schools wanting to employ apprentices. So hopefully that kind of answers that part. I know it's not the best answer. We would do our best to find you a placement. We do have a dedicated placement team and a dedicated partnerships team. So we'd be working with all of our school contacts. But yeah, it is very difficult to say. In terms of the fee funded route, obviously that is a little bit less competitive just because it's unsalaried. So you're more than welcome to switch over to the fee funded route if, say, you've had a successful interview and then it's been a couple of months and we haven't really got anywhere with finding you a placement, then yeah, we can definitely switch you over to the fee funded route and there might be a little bit more interest from schools there.
Thank you, Amanda. Someone's asked about whether the unqualified salary varies based on experience or on whether someone has some previous qualifications.
So it's very much based on what the school sort of feels would be an appropriate salary for you. It's very much dependent on what the school what their budget is like, and just what sort of experience you have that they deem might allow you to sort of be on that upper end of the scale. But yeah, very much dependent on school and location.
Thank you, Amanda. We've got one final question about if someone does their teacher training in England, can they still teach and get a teaching job in Wales? Do you know the answer to that question, Amanda?
That's a good question, actually. Good one to end on because I am not too sure. I'm fairly certain that qualified teacher status is relevant in Wales, but I'm not sure
Mm-hmm.
if you have any thoughts
Yeah,
about
as
that.
far as I understand it, does qualify you to teach in Wales as well. There are different curriculums. There are also different exam boards for secondary. There are Welsh exam boards. So there will be a slight difference perhaps in some of the assessment for secondary. But as far as we're concerned, I think that it does qualify you to teach in Wales. But have a look on the Get Into Teaching website, and there'll be more information on there about that just to sort of double check that.
Amazing. So I think we will end it there. Thank you again, everyone, and also thank you to Chloe for supporting me on this one. And yeah, if anyone has any other questions, please just feel free to email us. The email's on screen, or just give us a call. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening.